So what about today? With this sort of dual influence of the Web 2.0 in which users expect to participate, and this understanding that the majority of the users were not actually participating on their websites, museums have started to think about how do they reach people online. It's no longer about once the visitors are there, we provide them with all the tools and the possibilities for finding what they want, but it's how do we get them there in the first place in a way that feels meaningful to them. And that's turning to platforms. And those other platforms are the usual suspects of Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all the social media platforms on which users already are, on which they've already developed a language and a sort of content that is formatted for that particular screen. I'm thinking of it started in China, I believe, but there are more and more TV series that are being shot in portrait mode because they are meant to be seen as Instagram stories or as Facebook stories. Essentially the same. And that means that we're already developing an understanding of what it means to watch something on a phone, and that this is how people would hold their phones. And can we think of adapting that content and producing meaningful content that is based on that very medium that they're using? So that already, like this thinking already happens for content creators on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on SoundCloud, on anything that you want. And so museums don't have to develop their own from scratch, and they can latch on to what has already been created on a social media format. The inverse phenomenon is also happening in the sense that with this interconnectedness and with this technology of the API that we mentioned earlier, platforms are also reaching into the museums and to the museum space. And most notably, it's the different websites that Google Arts and Culture creates, which are very interesting to look at because it's the credibility of the museum as like a neutral, strong institution, or so it presents itself. So taking that street cred, if you want, and then applying it to Google, who as a corporation has a better image because it's dealing with arts and culture. So this desire of reaping the benefits of the image of the museums, and also this knowledge that Google has of, or any tech company has, of user experience and UI and understanding user-centric design. That if you want people to use your product, or if you want people to engage with you, you have to meet them on their own grounds. And that's something that technology companies have understood for a long time and are putting significant effort in, and that museums do not. A lot of museum websites. I'm thinking of the Hermitage in Moscow, which is one of the richest collections in the world and has a website that was made in 1995. Or it's a figure of speech, I don't exactly know when it was made, but it feels like it was made in 1995. So there's this double movement, right? Like the museums have the street cred and they want to like reap in the know-how and the language of the platforms, and then the platforms have the know-how and they want to have the street cred of the museums. And that's where we are right now. To give you some examples of that, these are current examples that are happening because of the fact that half of the world's population is summoned to stay at home. So the museums in New York have started a Twitter hashtag on which each different participating museum or creator are contributing to like a nice piece of art to like let people escape from the anxiety of the current situation, which ties back to Goodman's understanding or Goodman's perspective of having an object that you appropriate and that you provide function in your life. The water, like Monet's water lilies are no longer just Monet's water lilies in the water lilies room at MoMA. Monet's water lilies is something that is being distributed to the broadest audience in order to make them feel better in a day that might not be the best that they had in the world. Another example of that is at the Prado in Madrid. The security guards have started curating the collection, and so they post on the social media accounts of the museum what are the pieces they like, what are the histories that they have about the museum, and that's by removing the sort of label of chief curator, art curator, or someone who knows, and by having other members of the staff offer their vision, it's also showing this shift away from the object-centric or the collection-centric perspective towards the user-centric perspective. And then finally is an Instagram account that was created especially for that particular event in spring 2020, is a collaborative account between museums in Germany where they post different members of their different pieces of their collection. And that integrates into the broader social media discourse about quarantine. Right, so they could have, and they do have exhibitions about pandemics throughout history and how different artists have depicted disease in different ways. But this is also a very effective and highlighted way of making yourself relevant as a museum and making your collection feel relevant as a museum. And through posting like a little thumbnail of a painting that might have taken 4 years to paint, it is a reproduction. It is not as sacred, as beautiful, and doesn't have the aura as the original, but it helps the original stay alive by being reproduced and by being distributed. So in the end, the first part that we talked about was the challenges of reproduction. And the reproduction is, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the people that I mentioned, something that is necessary for art and democracy. The broadest access to beautiful things is something that should be encouraged. The question of diminishing, of whether or not these reproductions diminish the value of the original, I think has been rendered moot because now museums have shown that they operate in different levels, in different spheres, that originals are there for the specific research, academic work that is to be done and that is part of the museum's mission, while the reproduction sort of both acts as an interface, so it acts as a gateway drug, you can say it like this, towards the more traditional mission of the museum, but it also acts as the symbol of the relevance of the artwork still today in our lives. And the way that they managed to solve that dilemma was by focusing on what the visitor wanted in the end. And that sort of follows the same pattern that we've been exploring throughout the semester of user customization and user preferences and community participation from museums, in which the different voices are being heard and the different voices are expecting to be heard. And as you develop and as you finish your design documents and as you're developing your projects, it's always something that you want to keep in mind, is that there there is a shift towards the individual as legitimate knowledge creator. It's not just about having people take as many selfies as they want, but it's recognizing that everybody has an expertise, everybody can have taste, and everybody can have a relevant opinion about potentially any sort of artwork. So instead of ending on this beautiful note, we're going to end on homework. For the day after tomorrow, for Wednesday, please upload your reading responses about the two texts that were assigned this week. The one about the Imaginary Museum of Malraux and the one about critical code studies at the British Museum. Upload your design documents in the folder, in the resources folder on the class website, and come ready to talk about it in recitation. Half of recitation will be dedicated to you walking through your projects and the state at which it is. The second half of recitation will be about learning how to do API calls in Unity. So I'll see you all on Wednesday, and I'll see you on YouTube next week.